I want to introduce somebody who has often closed off our Christmas demos and our June 1st rallies with his support for injured workers, with his support for all workers. He's a friend to the struggle. It's my great pleasure to introduce Fred Hahn of CUPE.
My name is Fred, and I am joining you from what's called the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant Treaty, sometimes called from the Mississaugas of the Credit River. It was a covenant between a number of Indigenous communities to share and care for the communities and the land around the Great Lakes. And the reason it's important to remember that is not just because it's important to acknowledge the land that we're meeting from, but because of the wisdom of Indigenous people. Because Indigenous people, of course, would never have allowed what happens to injured workers in our society today. They would never have allowed this to happen. And it is the settler ideology and colonialism that has driven that from us. But they teach us that everything we do, actions that we have today, impact for 7 generations. And so much of what people have said today has been impactful, not just today, but will be impactful into the future. I'm like Sue, I'm winging it. So I'm going to try hard to time myself. I want to start by thanking David and the Injured Workers Community Legal Clinic. They are angels among us, and they do incredibly important work. I want to thank Janet and the Ontario Network for Injured Workers Groups. Incredibly important work that you all do. I want to bring you solidarity from our members. CUPE members work in long-term care facilities and in hospitals, in schools and in universities, in developmental care settings, in childcare, in shelters, in cities and towns. We also represent folks at the WSIB, at Local 1750 of CUPE, and I want to bring you specifically solidarity from those workers. And I want you to know that the people on the front lines of the WSIB are not making the decisions of the WSIB. In fact, their decision-making capacity, their professionalism, their ability to make decisions based on what they know is right for injured workers has been diminished year after year after year. It is now becoming, in fact, a bit of a soulless job for them. And I know that you deal with our members, and I know that they must deal with you, but I do want you to understand, I hope you believe me when I tell you, that they are in solidarity with injured workers, and they understand that the system is broken and that it must be fixed. I want to just address something that, how do we make change? Who is responsible? I will say that in my view, naturally, of course, we should not let those leading the WSIB off the hook, but those people are appointed by the provincial government, and so we should aim clearly, in my view, at the provincial government, and particularly at the Ford Conservatives. How did we get here? How is it the story that we just heard from Manu is not an uncommon story? It is because we don't have sufficient resources to do contact tracing in our communities. It's because employers are being left, given a huge advantage to say, well, it wasn't here. It didn't happen at work. And there's no contact tracing that really demonstrates one way or the other. And so they just call things community spread because we don't have sufficient resources to actually tell us what's going on. I represent unionized workers. You've heard from folks in unions, but there's a real crisis, I would say, happening in non-unionized workplaces. In fact, what we're hearing about from the city of Brampton, the huge case counts there, the racism that is implied that it has something to do with people's culture or their religion, it is absolutely untrue. The reality, and even Patrick Brown, the past leader of the Conservative Party, has admitted that the real problem is workplace transmission in profitable, non-unionized manufacturing and transportation plants because there is no rule there. There is no real health and safety committee there. The health and safety committee is the supervisor. And when people become sick, they just go off of work. They aren't contact traced. There's no requirement for them to report. It is incredibly devastating. And without that information, people's worst angels are left, or they're devils, I should say. That's where racism, it rears its ugly head. It's why it's so important that all these things are connected. I know I'm coming up to 5 minutes, so let me just say this. Look, I'm gonna sound like an old radical, but the real problem here is capitalism. The real problem here is our system. The real problem here is that profit matters more than people. The real problem here is that unfunded liability matters more than injured work. So I get emotional because many of our members have been impacted, but not as much as so many of your members have been impacted. But here's what I know. COVID has changed everything for all of us. It's changed everything for all of us, and that means it should also change our ability to work together, whether you're a teacher, whether you're a steelworker, whether you've never been in a union, whether you've been injured at work, whether you're a lawyer, whether you're a public sector worker, whether you're a private sector worker, whether you're just somebody in the community who understands enough is enough. It is time for us to truly end it. Earnest work together. We have a government sitting on $12 billion of unspent money, your money and my money. They just passed a budget. That budget actually cuts taxes for businesses, education taxes. 98% of businesses are getting a tax cut that pays for our education system. They're not only cutting premiums to WSIB, but we're also now, you and me, and our taxes are paying for the hydro bills of Galen, Weston, and Loblaws and Walmart because we have a subsidy because our privatized hydro system rates are so high. They need to help business. And how do they help business? With your money and my money. That's costing us $6 billion. $6 billion to pay hydro bills for corporations. Look, friends, I could go on. And I know you don't want me to because I'm already over time, but I will say this. Thank you for letting me join today. I'm so inspired by all of you. And I have no doubt about this. 2021 will be the beginning of the true roaring 20s. Injured workers and working people and people in communities will roar, and we will take back our province. We will take back our compensation system. It might not happen in 1 year, friends, but that's okay. We got nothing but time on our hands. We can do this together. Thank you.